Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Enigmatic Entertainment. I'm back again with another video. This is the documentary album review. As you probably already know, the documentary is the major record label debut studio album by rapper The Game. It's considered a West Coast classic and by many a classic hip-hop album in general, Released in '05, at a time when West Coast rappers weren't really at the forefront in the mainstream, of hip hop. And, California, LA area, Game really brought that back, honestly, for a time being. And that's something that he should be applauded for, It was, at that time, probably we were listening to down south music, Atlanta and things of that nature. So, he kind of pushed back on that a bit. I remember hearing some of the biggest songs from this album back as a teen. And over time, Game became one of my favorite West Coast artists ever. I bought this album like some years back, and I still have the CD like somewhere in my closet, I'm sure. As a rapper, he's made some of my favorite diss tracks as well, which is, always nice to hear. I love diss tracks. Track 1 is Intro to the Documentary. This is a 32-second long track, spoken word piece, background music accompanying it. The person makes a reference to it like being a game, whatever it is, and he plays it to win and all that stuff, I'm sure it was just something that was picked out, to try to be clever since the artist's name is The Game. Hey, makes sense, just an intro. But moving on, track 2 is Westside Story. This is like an ode to the West Coast, as you could probably tell from the title. This was released as the lead single from the album. Lyrically, Game does what he's now quite well known for, shouting out loads of rappers and singers and even non-musicians and fictional characters. I mean, hell, he just shouts out names like it's nobody's business. A lot of references, But hey, it gets kind of funny when you see how big a part those lyrics really make out of his album as a total, the shout outs and references and all that stuff, the comparisons. Game here talks about his gangsta and all that stuff and mentions a bunch of stereotypical West Coast stuff like Compton, Aftermath Records, Dr. Dre, and the like. The song also features 50 Cent on the chorus, and he's singing about chronic, which is a reference, of course, to Dr. Dre's album, as well as cannabis, which California is quite well known for. Overall, it's a pretty good introduction to what you can expect from the rest of the album, and Game as a rapper, backed by some Dr. Dre and Scott Storch production, which was pretty good. It definitely is no slouch of a song by any means, that's for sure. That's why they picked it for a lead single, Next up is track 3, that is Dreams. Yet again, another single from the album and probably one of his most well-known songs and features production from Kanye West. I think that this is probably the one that people really know. I mean, besides obviously the classic one, which I'll be getting to very shortly. This takes a more somber tone, though, as Game mentions a bunch of people, especially musicians, who died young, such as Tupac, Aaliyah, Left Eye, and so on. In the outro, he also states that this song is for Yetunde Price, who is the older half-sister of Vanessa and Serena Williams, the Williams sisters, the tennis players, of course. And she was apparently shot and killed in 2003, unfortunately. Over the chorus, Game talks about the dreams that these young artists had, and the sample fits quite well in with the chorus. Really, the way, I guess it was Kanye that probably chopped it up like that. Check it out and you know exactly what I'm talking about. He continues the shout outs to various people, including the likes of Eazy-E, Huey P. Newton, and more. Huey P. Newton being one of the founding members of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, which was founded in Oakland, California. So, that's another California reference thrown in there for those that just don't know. Black Panthers. Easily, this is one of the more well-known, heartfelt, and liked tracks on the album. How can you really dislike a track about this subject matter, really, And it's one of my personal favorites as well. He takes a break from the gangster-themed lyrics that most of the album center around to pay homage to those that paved the way for him in hip-hop, Next up is track 4, Hate It or Love It. the underdogs on top, and and all that. Once again, like I mentioned just a minute ago, this is probably the most well known track on the album, but Dreams is definitely up there as well. And just like the previous two songs, this was also released as a single and features production by Cool and Dre and a sample of the song Rubber Band by the group The Tramps. Never heard them before until researching for this album review. Looking up samples is pretty cool sometimes, Once again, it was released as a single and features 50 Cent as well, just like Westside Story. 50 Cent is pretty much on half of the singles released from this album, so just get used to it, 50 Cent's on the first verse, he talks about how he grew up. He also does the bridge of the song, enough of me, nigga, now listen to the game and all that. He also shares the chorus with Game, so once again, he's quite heavily on this track. And Game on his verses details, his affiliation, overall, what his affiliation is, obviously. Don't need to say it. Growing up in Compton, and as usual, makes plenty of references to various people, just like he typically does. Growing up in Compton sounded like it was pretty rough for him. But this third verse in particular is a bit of a tearjerker. He makes references to Pac being dead, Brenda still throwing babies in the garbage, like the song Brenda's Got a Baby. And he thinks about, he poses the question, what would have happened if his mother indeed got an abortion instead of giving birth to him, Easily one of my favorite verses by him and one of my favorite songs on the album overall. Easily a top 3 song, a standout track, you name it, it's classic. Probably my favorite 50 Cent and G-Unit, or 50 Cent and Game collaboration rather, because at this point G-Unit was consisting of Game anyway, right? A classic rags to riches story, and commercially it did pretty well as well. It was a freaking chart topper. The song was also remixed for 50 Cent's second album, The Massacre, which was released shortly after the documentary. And the remix features the rest of G-Unit, Lloyd Banks, Young Buck, and Tony Yayo. And also, Game did another version of this song once the beef with him and 50 Cent and G-Unit started. He did a version of it just with Game, just him on it himself, doing the chorus, everything himself, and he basically disses G-Unit on the whole song. All 3 versions of the song are good to me. This version, the remix, and the original, classic. Easily classic. Without a doubt. One of my favorite Game songs ever. Track 5 is Higher. Now we really got to the point where this is probably my number 1 song on the album. This was released as a single, but only in France, and I don't know why. It should have just been released a single internationally everywhere, but I mean, I don't know. Maybe French people like this song. This is easily one of the best beats I've heard, probably in general. I don't know, it's just hard. It bumps into whip, it bangs hard. Let me leave it at that. It just does. Listen to it. You're going to be nodding your head. It was produced by Mark Batson and Dr. Dre, and apparently it was a beat that 50 Cent was originally going to be given, but he didn't like it, so Dre gave it to Game instead, which I'm glad because Game did his freaking thing on this damn song. I know this sounds repetitive, but once again, lyrically it's full of a lot of references to freaking people. This is classic at this point, and it's just still the beginning of the album, pretty much. I call it like I see it, or hear it, in this case. One line in particular about, not wanting Mariah Carey because her forehead is too big, like Tyra Banks, is pretty damn funny to me, and it's an example of comedic lines that Game has every now and then that he just tosses in with his references, but still comes across pretty hard thanks to his aggressive and braggadocious delivery. He's cocky enough, yeah, I would turn down Mariah Carey and Tyra Banks, even though you're just a up and coming rapper, still basically I get it, the cocky, it fits sometimes, you feel me? Next up is track 6, How We Do. This continues the odd thing about this album, really, that I've noticed when I went back to listen to this a little bit. Nearly all of my favorite songs on this album, and as well as the singles, are on the first, half of the album, This album's greatest highs are pretty much in the beginning. Not to say that the worst, that the rest is really bad. It's just, it starts off really high, and it comes down a bit. Not really low, but it just comes down a little bit, And it kind of stays like that for the most part. I guess sequencing is a little off. Like there wasn't much of a mix up, like a single here and a single there and a single there. It was just like singles, chart toppers, and all that. And you know, I don't get it. This was released as the second single from the album, and once again features 50 Cent. Again, like I said, half of the singles pretty much do. It makes great sense marketing wise to feature 50 Cent like it does, and these are some of my favorite songs. This is a club banger with Game and 50 Cent on the first and second verses respectively, and they share the third one. Another classic track about stunting on people, repping G Unit and all that stuff like they did so heavily back in the days. It fit for the time. Next up is track 7, Don't Need Your Love. This one features Faith Evans on the chorus, and the production is handled by Havoc of Mobb Deep. And according to an interview with Game, the beat needed to be reproduced by Dr. Dre because Havoc apparently misplaced some of the original files for it. It samples Not Gon' Cry by Mary J. Blige, which is another classic track. Game raps about the shooting that occurred during a drug deal, basically, that landed him in the hospital with a bullet wound to the chest. Maybe the title and chorus have to do with, Game not expecting or needing love anymore because of what happened and, how things sometimes go down when you're in that lifestyle, so to speak. And, it's just like, I don't need your love. I'm cool. Like, I'm getting my money and I'm doing me. And so, hey, it makes sense. You harden yourself to it and just grin and bear it, I guess, and know what you're getting yourself into. Regardless, though, this is another decent track with plenty of references to other artists who have been shot, like Tupac and Biggie, and even includes a shout out to Afeni Shakur and Miss Wallace, who is obviously Biggie's mother, and Afeni Shakur is Tupac's mother. It's very heartfelt, aggressive, yet passionate as well. Next up is track 8, Church for Thugs. This features an upbeat Just Blaze instrumental with Game spitting his usual Tupac, Eazy-E, Biggie references. There's really not many songs on here that don't have a whole bunch, so hopefully you're used to it at this point. I guess the title comes from Game preaching to thugs and question about his toughness and the street life or something like that. The chorus has him doing a kind of sing-songy type braggadocious example of his real toughness over everyone else's just tough talk and perceived toughness and whatnot by comparison. Overall, this one is alright. Not my favorite song on the album at all. This is more so in the bottom of it for me. Not that it's horrible or anything, just, some songs gotta be down there, right? If we're ranking it all, but hey. Next up is track 9, Put You on the Game, features production by Timbaland and Danger, and was released as the last single from the album. Like I said, the whole first half of the album pretty much has all the singles. Another one of my favorite songs on the album, though, that's for sure. Timbaland and Danger truly do their thing here. It really sounds like a Timbaland beat and features Timbaland doing the introduction as well. Just a song comes on, you can just tell, yo, that was him. This song comes on, that was Timbaland. That's just, you can just feel it, He mentions Timbaland also 4 times on the song, and 3 of them alone are in the first freaking verse. Timbaland, yo, Timbo, Tim. And I'm like, yo, okay, we get it, man. You just name dropping. Oh man, I'm dropping all these names. You just spitting out names, and they're falling all over the freaking floor in the studio. I'm pretty damn sure. Yo, Game, did you just drop 30 names? Yeah, I'll pick them up soon. It's okay. Trust me, this will work. I'm like, no, but okay. Once again, I'm just pointing out the fact that he makes mad references. I still like his freaking music for the most part. I'm just saying, This is still a standout track for me. It didn't do as well as his other singles did, chart-wise, but still one of my favorites, without a doubt. Put You on the Game. Next up is track 10, Start From Scratch. This is a song that changes the pace from the rest of the album once again, because Game raps in an almost drunk, a drunken kind of almost crying tone about how all of the things he could have changed if he can go back and do certain events over. He even references situations like Tupac stomping out Orlando, Eazy-E and Dr. Dre breaking up NWA, and various people he knows getting killed, and how he would have stopped it. It's a bit darker of a tone and very heartfelt, and probably one of the most relatable tracks on the song, because the premise, who doesn't have things that they wish they can change and start over from the beginning and you just redo changes or save somebody, help somebody out and fix something that went wrong, The song features Marsha Ambrosius on the chorus. I hope I pronounced her name correctly. And she also does a pretty dang good job. Truthfully, she truly does. Props to her. Next up is track 11, The Documentary. This is the title track and sums up a lot of what Game does for the majority of the album, you know? He uses this like 30-second clip or so from this movie titled Living the Life, which was also apparently filmed in Compton. Never knew what it was until I was doing research once again for the album review. But including film audio in the song makes sense considering it's documentary and it's a documentary of his life and Compton. The movie's filmed in Compton and it's blah blah blah. And if it's at the beginning and it's like the cinematic and theatrical, makes sense, I guess. But I typically just like skip that or whatever. Game does a lot of referencing here as usual, and the chorus is basically Game just mentioning a whole bunch of classic titles like Doggy Style and Reasonable Doubt and Illmatic and Life After Death or it was one of Biggie's albums. Was Life After Death or the other one? Either way, though, he names a bunch of classic albums and then he drops his afterwards, you know, like, and this is the documentary. And I'm just like, okay, but that's supposed to be like you like throwing your album in the bucket of names, like, you know, freaking classic album dropping now too. Like, I get it. This album did become a classic. It's been released over like 15 years ago now, and most people consider it a classic. So hey, it worked, right? You got to speak thoughts to power, or however they phrase that line. He even talks in this song about like doing songs with Mary J Blige and Faith Evans and being the protege of Dr. Dre. So he really gives you a documentary of his life up till now and what he's doing and in music, and I like that. It's pretty cool, you know. Not a bad song at all. Next up is track number 12, Runnin. This one features singer Dion on the chorus, and Tony Yayo is on the second verse rapping about, you know, referencing jail and all that stuff because he was in prison around this time, like, I guess shortly before or after, like, this verse, I don't know. He was in, and he's back out, and he's back in, and he's back out, and he's back in. It's like, you know, with Yayo. You know, he talks about, you know, if he has to kill somebody, he's going to go on the run and stuff like that, referencing back in with the title of the track, Runnin. Dion's chorus puts emphasis on the running too, singing about how bench warmers don't get playing time and how there's no time for sleep, so you gotta keep running. Definitely relatable. You gotta stay on your grind. I get it. Once again, okay track. I could take it or leave it, really. Next up is track 13, No More Fun and Games. Now, here we go. This is another Just Blaze production. Just Blaze. It features a sample from NWA's song Gangsta Gangsta from their first album, Straight Outta Compton, which is a classic freaking album too. And that's one of my favorite songs by them, really. Gangsta, Gangsta. Yeah. On the intro, Game says, you know, 3 minutes. And I'm like, what is that supposed to mean, my man? Because the song is like 2 minutes and 37 seconds. So maybe he should have been like 3 minutes or less. And, you know, just some freaking silly, goofy humor of mine. But no, for real though, it's probably the shortest track on this album, not counting the introduction at the beginning. That was 32 seconds. So, the song is pretty cool. Game wraps it up pretty quick, you know, rapping pretty fast and all that. And his whole third verse is him just pretty much talking about like what's he gonna do, like referencing time and all that stuff. Like, let me just give it to you directly. You're gonna see what I'm talking about. I've been rapping for 1 year, 1 month, 17 days, 13 hours, 28 minutes. Then I met Dre. 30 minutes after I bought the new M. That was November 18th, 3:09 p.m. Around the same time Wangsta got its first spit. That was 32 weeks before they signed Rakim. 8 months, 13 days before I knew a Mike Lynn. And 3 years after Mason Betha turned his mic in. And then he continues to go on a little bit more in the verse, like doing that kind of stuff. Just referencing a whole bunch of like time and events that happen, like LeBron getting a Nike deal or something like that. Basically just comparing how long he's been rapping to a whole bunch of stuff, you know, like, yeah, I've been rapping this long and this happened then, so, you know, just giving you a frame of reference to know. He basically saying, bragging like, yo, I ain't been rapping long, yo, but yeah, it's okay, it's fine. Next up is track 14, We Ain't. This one features Eminem on the second verse as well as on the production, and this whole freaking song screams Eminem. Even Game raps like freaking Eminem on this song. Not a bad thing if you like Eminem. For M fans, I'm sure it's great. I'm not really an Eminem fan though, so I was just like, alright, Game is like being a chameleon and soaking up Eminem in the studio and just rapping just like him. I guess that's a talent, being able to mimic someone that's featuring on your song. Like, no, for real, that's actually pretty talented especially for like a relatively new rapper. That's pretty cool. The chorus features samples from like various Dre and Eminem lines from like various songs they've been on and whatnot, while Game chants like in the chorus as well, like we ain't going nowhere. And I'm like, and we're bad boy for life. I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, if you don't know our reference, then you need to go listen to some 90s music. But anyways, this quite fits with the title of the song. Yet again, just another decent track. I'm sure Eminem fans will like it a bit more. Next up is track 15, Where I'm From. This is an ode to Compton. Game raps about his hometown of Compton, briefly comparing it to like other cities, but still citing that Compton's the best, is where I'm from, blah blah blah. More braggadocious stuff about Compton. Not a problem. I get it. Rep it to the fullest. It's your city, man. It made you who you are, and that's okay. Nate Dogg is on the chorus as well. He's featured on here. Not a bad song. Rep your city. Do what you gotta do. Not one of my favorites. I can honestly take it or leave it. It doesn't really stick out to me, and it's barely memorable for me personally. Just like one of those other tracks I mentioned up earlier. It is what it is. Next up is track 16, which is Special. This is like the love song of the album, I guess. And also features Nate Dogg again, back to back. I'm surprised. He's once again doing the chorus. Game talks about meeting a woman, going on dates, and all that romantic stuff, Then by the third verse, somehow he's talking about how her boyfriend is hitting her, and Game wants her to leave the guy for him, and he's talking about how much money he got. He got a gun, and he's gonna do all this tough talk and stuff. And it's funny, because even on a love song, Game basically has to be so tough and gangster. It's kind of funny, but he still plays it, he still pulls it off, like, pretty decently. Now this one's alright. This one's cool, I get it. Next up is track 17, Don't Worry. This is like another love song on the album, and it's funny because the previous two songs were technically love songs. So even Where I'm from, he was like talking about Compton and like positively. So it's a love song for his city, kind of. You know what I mean? But so this one is more of a duet, though. Don't Worry. It's featuring Mary J Blige, a ghetto love story of sorts. Mary J sings about Game being in jail, prison, and whatnot, and she's missing him and how she's loyal, but people are always in her ear telling her this and that about him, and he's no good, and he's this and he's that, and she's just like, no, I'm not listening, and screw it, I'm with my man, and I'm loyal, and I'm like, yo, she holding it down, that's what's up, 2 thumbs up, you know what I'm saying? But, Game in response is like a call and return thing. He's like, oh, it's rough in here, and I miss you, I can't wait to get out and be with you again. Oh, it's so sweet and lovey-dovey. It's pretty cool. That's loyalty right there. It's not bad at all. Once again, Mary J Blige does her thing like she usually does. And on a side note, isn't it just odd that she's like the singer that's featured the most on rap songs, I feel like. I mentioned this in my Kid Cudi review, how she was featured on a song or two of his as well. And it just seems common at this point to get her, but it works, though. It works. So I'm not saying that. It works pretty damn often. Apparently, though, Brandy was supposed to be on this song originally, but Jimmy Iovine, from Aftermath, Interscope, rejected it. I guess because, like her image of being Brandy, being Moesha, TV star, so on and so forth, and Game being a gangster rapper just didn't fit well. But hey, that's people not from our culture trying to take part in it. Whatever. Anyways, the song still came out pretty good, so it is what it is. Next up is track 18. This is Like Father, Like Son, and this is the album finisher. Pretty long album. This is truly a great song, though, one of my favorites. The song follows the previous 2 love songs, but this time, instead of talking to or about a woman, he is talking about his son. So it's even more heartwarming and emotional. He had a newborn son, I don't know how long before the album was released. But, yeah. Nothing complex to really break down here. It's a love song, basically, to his newborn child. Busta Rhymes is featured on the song. He does the chorus, speaking to his son, saying, grow up, be better than me, don't be like me, and all that. And this sentiment, I'm sure a lot of us can agree with. We want our children to grow up and be even better than we are. I don't have any children myself yet, of course, but I can still easily relate to that. Very heartfelt, sentimental track on the album, and one of my favorites easily. Game goes into detail about the night of his son's birth, even going to thank the doctor, nurse, various associates of his, people he's affiliated with, shouts out like his son's godfathers, his son's grandfather, and all that. It's very chilling then as he then shouts out the children of other rappers like Eazy-E, Big Pun, and Biggie, who have all either been killed or passed on due to disease and whatnot, and left children behind that also rap. And he references a shooting that could have killed him as well, which would have led to him never having his son to begin with. This track makes me tear up, honestly. Sometimes it truly does, and it's so emotional. I just love it. It's a great song and a great album finisher, like I said, and Busta definitely did his thing on the chorus, that is for sure. Like father, like son. Overall, the documentary is an album that, like I said, considered a West Coast classic. Some consider it an overall hip-hop classic. In general, you decide. Hey, it's a great major record label debut, though. That's without a doubt. Despite a few songs I'd pass on, like in the middle and towards the end and whatnot, I feel like it could have just been a little bit shorter by taking out like 2 or 3 different tracks. It was also a bit feature-heavy, but that was mostly just for choruses and bridges of songs, so that's fine. Production-wise, there were some heavy hitters and classic beats, Dre, Cool and Dre, Scott Storch, Timbaland and all that. They definitely did their things with the beats, that's for sure. Lyrically, Game does a lot of name dropping and all that here, and that was this is pretty much the beginning, rather, of that, which he continues to do on further albums, and even still now, I believe. And he paved the way for what some would say was a resurgence of West Coast hip-hop, as you see some artists like TDE came out a few years later dropping mixtapes and albums and whatnot, and other artists like YG and Nipsey Hussle, so on and so forth, What do you think? Classic? West Coast classic? Overall classic? Classic hip-hop album? Classic album in general? What do you guys think? But hey, that was Game documentary. Leave a comment in the comment section below if you have any questions, comments. What do you think about the album? Feel free to tell me. If you have any suggestions, leave that in the comment section below as well. Links, as usual, will be in the description box below. Keep in mind to subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. Follow the channel on Twitch, Twitter, and Instagram if you have not done so already as well. Click the thumbs up button if you like the video. It helps. And, of course, remember to share it with somebody. And I'm open for other suggestions as well. And that goes out also to artists, also that up-and-coming artists, new artists. Feel free to reach out to me. Hey, I love music with a passion. I truly do. So give me some recommendations for stuff for me to listen to. And let's just have fun. So as always, thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more because more is on the way, coming with new content. And I'm out.